Om Niranjanam Nityam Anantarupam Bhaktanukampa Dhृतविग्रहं Vai Ishāvataram Parameshamidhyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasha Namamaha. Namaste and greetings to whichever part of the world you are in. We hope that you are keeping well and safe in this global lockdown, unable to travel around, not having the movement of freedom and doing things that you usually do. But it's also an opportunity for us to take advantage of this to explore ourselves, reflect on our life, and we invite you to exploring your own inner space, not the outer space. So this is going to be a series of talks on the subject mind management techniques, and through these talks I would like to share some ideas, not necessarily spiritual at the spiritual level, by which I mean talking about liberation and freedom and God realization, but more about managing the mind itself. What is the mind? What are the contents of the mind? What are the powers of the mind? How do we empower ourselves to have greater control of the mind? How to maintain that poise and balance? How to develop those powers through which we can make the right decisions at the right time? Such practical, useful knowledge and techniques I would like to explore and share with you. And hopefully we would like to then put this together in some form, in a more structured form that can be then served to people in different situations and different stages of growth. So, let us start with trying to understand what the mind is. Having a good knowledge of what the mind is, we all have minds, we can't see it, it's not a physical thing. We have some idea how it functions. We use it every day from morning to evening. When you get up in the morning to the time you go to sleep, we are consciously using that mind, and but not always in control of the mind. So this is sometimes like a wild horse taking us more for a ride than us riding the horse. So how do we develop that capacity to be more in control gradually, systematically? Nothing will happen overnight, but if we are focused and determined, then just like a wild horse can be broken and brought under control, likewise the mind also can become under our control. And then we can really enjoy this ride through this life, because this is the horse we are all riding. So let us understand explore what this mind is. Mind is a tool that we have. The first thing that we have to understand, we are not the mind. We are something else, and we use the mind as a tool through which we explore or interact with the outside world. We receive whatever the world has to offer to us in terms of perception, knowledge, and we also dish out to the world or react to the world or respond to the world through the mind. So the instruments of knowledge, we said in mind, through the mind we manage knowledge, explore knowledge, create knowledge, receive knowledge. Let us explore that process, how that happens. So we have these 5 sense organs of knowledge we call jnana indriya, through which we interact with the world, through which we perceive things of the world. And that happens in the waking state of the mind. So there are 3 states of the mind. The waking state is called the Jagrat Avastha, when we are awake to the world, conscious of the things around us. But the same mind again sometimes shifts to another level when it's in a dream state, Swapna Avastha. In that state, compared to the waking, is that even though all those things are around us, we do not perceive them through the sense organs anymore. Somehow they have been all shut up. So to say, things are there, ears are there, but you're not hearing through them. The eyes are there, but you're not seeing through them. But you are perceiving dream state, swapna avastha. And there's even a deeper state of mind. In the dream state, at least we have some identity of a dreamer. We are doing things, crazy things, traveling around the world, eating, drinking, flying, all those things are happening. We have an identity. And we remember some of those dream images. But in the deep state, deep sleep, we have no idea of whether we are young or old, male or female, whatever. It's an all identities are sort of put away. Yet we exist, because when we come out of that, we have some sense of that experience and we say, I slept well, I'm rested. So there is this I sense that becomes identified with all these three levels. So the lowest or the waking state is there, Jagrata Avastha, then dream state, Swapna Avastha, and the deep state is the Sushupti. Beyond that is another state which is called the fourth state compared to these three. And that is in Sanskrit is called the Turiya state, Turiya Avastha, or the super conscious state. And that is not accessible to most of us. We unconsciously shuttle through the conscious, the waking, the dream, and the deep sleep day in, day out. Spiritual practice is really trying to have access to that superconscious state, which permeates and supports the other three. So in the waking state, let's explore, because that's something we are all experiencing. We see various things. Okay, I see a chair, I see some people. Let's explore that, what really happens in that perception. So, for example, I'm sitting outside on a bench or something, and I see a bird. Okay, I see the bird because there is light. In the dark night, I don't see the bird. So light is necessary for me to have that perception. What happens? The light from the sun falls on the bird, it bounces off the bird and comes to my eyes. My eyes have to be open to let the light in, and I must pay a little bit of attention to the bird, because there's so many things around that bird also. And if I direct my attention to other things, I might not register that the bird is there. Just like when I'm looking at the bird, I'm not looking at the tree the bird is sitting on. So a little bit of attention is there. Anyway, this light is then focused with the help of the lens in the eyes. And if assuming that you don't have any cataract or something, you let the light in. So there are many, many factors in the process of perception, so to say. And the light falls at the back of the lens, where there are some special cells, the rods and the cones that help you decode that the light signal into colors or in shades of black and white. That is then converted into an electrical signal and goes through the optic nerve to the back of the brain, which is the optic lobe, and therein the process of creating an image is generated. An image is generated, and you see a bird in there, in your own head. And so what happens there? So there's an image, it's in the shape of the bird. What the mind tries to immediately do is try to classify this bird. Okay. And it looks through the index of all the birds that have been kept there. And if it finds a match, then it responds and says, this is a pigeon, so to say. And you respond and says, I see a pigeon. Now, that is happening in a very fast split second, and is constantly being bombarded by the signal that is coming. So let us look at it from a science point of view. Light that came from the sun is a form of energy, vibrations. It comes and falls on that bird, and the whole spectrum of so many colors that are there in the white light that falls on the bird. Some are absorbed by the bird and some are reflected by the bird. whatever is reflected comes and lands on our eyes. So what we receive is a spectrum of light energies. That light energy is converted into an electrical energy that travels along the optic nerve to the back of the brain, and there it creates an image of a particular shape and form. Okay, there are various theories of how does the brain work, and one of the nice ones is that it is a holographic. It's like a hologram. Anyway, that image is created, and you see that particular image, and you say, this is a particular bird. Discriminate, you match it with what is existing. If, for example, a new bird comes in there on the same branch and sits, but you have never seen that particular bird, you do not know about it. So when that image is created in your mind, or in the back of your brain, so to say, let's not talk the mind, and you try to match it with the index of previously created images, and you don't find one, then you scratch your head and say, what is this? I don't know this. And so what's the difference when we said the first one I knew and the second one I did not know? So what is knowledge? We're trying to understand. So you scratch your head and you ask somebody, like a child might ask the mother, what is that bird? And the mother will give the name. This is a parrot. And what the child then does is, in the filing of the information in his mind, he puts the form of the parrot and indexes it with the label with the word parrot and how it's pronounced and all those type of things. He might even get the spelling and all those things right. And then he will say, I've got it, I know it. So throughout the day, from childhood as we grow, constantly, not only through the eyes but through the ears, we hear certain words. The words create a vibration of a sound or something in our mind, and we attach a meaning to that. And likewise, through the 5 sense organs, through the eyes, through the ears, through the nose, through the skin, and the tongue, we are interacting with the external world. These are our 5 organs of knowledge, senses of knowledge. And from childhood, in different environment, situation, either it's living in nature or going to a classroom where we systematically are given that knowledge in different subjects, in different levels, we build up this huge library of information, so to say, properly indexed and maybe interconnected and interlinked, so that when you think of one, then we find the network of other thoughts are all coming up there, and we say we are increasing in our knowledge. So when we say I know something, what is it that you really know? Okay. Is it you really know the thing, or you know the content of our mind that is part of your internal storage, so to say? So if we think very clearly now, if I see a person out there, or yes, and I observe the various features, the complexion, the gender, the age, and maybe I talk to that person, you're taking in different types of qualities of that person, and you are storing them in your own mind around the identity of that person. And if somebody asks you, do you know that person? You said, yes, I know that person. And how do you prove that you know that person? Well, you begin to bring out, I know this person is male. You begin to bring out all the information that you have stored with respect to that person. My question is then, do we really know that person? No. What we know is the content of our mind with respect to that person. Whatever is out there is really not known to us. What we know is the information that we have systematically classified in our mind in some organized way. Swami Vivekananda says, just like the post box in the post office. So you get a letter, and then the postman looks at the post box number, and then he puts in that particular box. So as information comes, we keep on slotting them, arranging them everywhere. And as we do that, and if we become very good at it, in organizing it and also retrieving it, remembering it or recollecting it, then we say we are becoming more and more knowledgeable about the things of the world. But really, do we know those things? So in Vedanta, they say, really we do not know. We do not know things as they are. What we know is the content of the mind. The outside world is an unknown and unknowable. On top of that, we add our mind. So if the outside world, for example, we say is X, X plus the mind is, the mind is our perception part of it, the X is the existence part of it. And the two are different. If we have that type of discrimination and understanding, very clear understanding that whatever we perceive in this world, whether it's a event happening or situation or an idea or something, what we really know is the content of our mind, not the thing itself. So we would not then jump to the conclusion and they say, I know that person or know that thing. We will be saying that I know the content of my mind with respect to that event or person or whatever. And we'll also be able to understand that maybe the content of that mind is not really accurate. There could be errors in it, depending on the source of that information. And if you become aware of that, then you will not be so judgmental and not so firm, and you will not argue about those things. You will make some way to say, maybe I've got it wrong. And that another person has seen the same thing, but because of their experience and interpretation, they have also picked up, and if we, in his picture of the way that person has collected the information would be different. Now we are beginning to argue and having a debate and having all those things because we don't agree on how we have interpreted the data. It's very interesting how we understand the psychology of the mind, and the moment we have that knowledge, immediately we can step back and say, okay, we are wasting so much time in arguing and trying to convince each other because we are just differently constituted. Maybe I should try to see how the other person has interpreted it and not try to force my interpretation on the other person. So become a good listener than trying to argue and push your idea to the other person. These are some practical applications there, and we are doing that using this mind. So it's very, very interesting to have this understanding that what we perceive, our perception, is separate from the thing in itself. And if we are mindful of that, this is a practice of mindfulness because it's happening all the time, then we will be a bit more careful in judging others. For example, I have not met somebody and somebody has been talking to me about that particular person. So that person becomes my source of information. I don't have a direct perception. And that person's experience, whether he personally interacted with that person or he also heard about that person, anyway, he has got something in his head, the data that is stored in his database, which he transmits to me by communicating, and I try to put that together and construct an image, which will be totally different from what he has got. Okay, my composition of that image could be there. And that source of that validity of that information could be totally wrong. He could be a very nice person, but this person has got some vested interest or different experience, and he tells me something maybe not so nice about this particular person, not so charitable. Keep away from him. It's not so good. Keep a distance because this. Now, I filed all that information in a quiet way in my mind. When I meet that particular person, my reaction to that person would be based on the information that I have collected. And because of the information was not so good, I might not be so welcoming to him, I might not interact with him in a nice way, I might keep a distance, whatever. But it could be all wrong information. And you will find that many times it happens, somebody has said something about another person, you had formed an impression of that particular person, but when you personally meet that person, you find that so nice and so wonderful, and so, why did I have that? We don't go further and say, I should not make that mistake of getting information from the wrong sources. So all these things are about the mind. We are collecting so much information constantly from the outside world. The sources of information could not be very reliable if it's indirect. If it's a direct perception, also it could not be very reliable depending on the how we have picked that knowledge, whether the information has come correctly. For example, somebody has a cataract, like I said, or somebody is sort of color blind or slightly ears are not as finely tuned, partly deaf, you might say. So the signals are coming, but the way he or she interprets it and files it will be different. So there could be a defect in the processing or the signal that's coming, insufficient light, it's in the evening, and I can't see properly. It could be a defect with the sense organ instruments. It could be a defect in how I have filed that information. Maybe I just didn't pay attention and wrongly classified it. But based on that inner information, we are now reacting with the world and judging and responding to the world. So with that background, let us try to see how in Vedanta we talk about the inner instrument. These 5 sense organs are the external instruments through which we interact with the world. The internal organs, the instruments, are called antakarana, inner instrument. So in the Vedanta philosophy, or in the yoga psychology, this antakarana, or the inner instrument through which we process all perceptions, has got 4 functional forms. Okay, and I will try to explain to you these aspects of the inner organ, what we call really the mind. We are entering into the mind space, so to say. This idea of a space is very interesting, and in Vedanta there are 3 levels of space. The physical space in which we live, we perceive all things, is called Maha Akasha, elemental space in which things exist. Things are boundaries and objects which our mind has decided. We'll call that a chair, this is a table, that's a person. That's how we play with those ideas inside. There's an object and there's a name inside, an image inside. So we are familiar with this space in which, right from a virus, a bacteria, to planets and galaxies exist. But finer than this is what is called the Chitta Akasha. Chitta means mind, mind space. And the contents of the mind space are thoughts and ideas. It's populated with those things, so to say. And it's teeming with all types of things, just like we've got all varieties of physical objects around us, which are not static but moving and dynamic and all that. The mental space is teeming with even more things, so to say, with all types of thoughts and ideas are flowing in and out. It's a very, very interesting way of looking at it. You'll see, just like this physical space has got different levels of it. You might be in the physical ground. You can be at 20-meter height, you can be at a 50-meter height or 1,000-meter height. And your perception of things will change depending on at what level you are. On the ground level, you see a blade of grass. From 20 meters, you don't see that. But the tree is still big. But from a kilometer high, the tree, and it's not much difference between the grass and the tree itself. So in the mental space, there is same gradients and differentiation is also there. At the bottom of the mental space, there are ideas and thoughts which are of a lower level, gross. And at the higher top end of the mental space, there are wonderful sublime ideas. And just like in the physical space, what you see depends at what level you are. Likewise, in the mental space, what you perceive in the thoughts and ideas will depend at what level you are. Also, we'll come to that idea later, but I'm saying that there's a physical space, which is material. There's a mental space in which ideas and thoughts are there. And beyond that, there is another space called Chid Akasha, the space of consciousness. And we are also part of that, but not very much aware of it. We are all aware that we are a conscious being, different from a chair and a table. But we are not really anchored so much in that consciousness all the time. Our sense of identity has got mixed up with that consciousness and this material world also. So we say, I am a body. We'll explore that little later. But I was going to talking to you about this inner instrument, the Antakarana. Anta means inner. It's made of 4 aspects: manas, chitta, buddhi, ahankara. Chitta, mana, buddhi, and ahankara. And let's try to understand these 4 things. The chitta is the mind stuff, the substance, the material, so to say. Mind is also matter, but finer matter. It is matter, but finer matter. Just like a solid piece of ice and water are the same, made out of same H2O molecules. But the difference is that the solid piece of ice is fixed in its shape and everything. The water has melted. But from the perspective of a water molecule, he sees himself equally in both states. Only thing is, when I'm in a frozen state and I can't move around here and there, then I'm in an ice state. When I have more freedom that I can swim in a vessel in which the water is kept, then he feels and you might say, you are now water. And if you have heated him up and he evaporates and is swimming around the space there totally free, then he says, I am a water vapor. It's the same thing, but in 3 states. So likewise, that which is appearing to us as physical matter, and that which is to us as a mind, and then again as consciousness, is the same substance, whatever it is, but in 3 states. And the transition point is like, what's the transition between matter and mind? Would be the transition point, something like between ice and water, and then you can transition it to another level. So the mind stuff in which all things are captured, the energy is captured and thoughts are being taken in and flowing around and all that is called the chitta. In the chitta, all the impressions are also kept, because it's not, you remember things that have been experienced, whether it's words or shapes or ideas from the past, so they have to be kept somewhere. It's like the hard disk of your brain. Okay. But when you are conscious of it, you pull it out from there into your CPU, the central processing unit, what is uploaded onto your system at the current time, so to say. So from the memory you bring those things and process, and again you can file it away again back. So chitta is the hard disk, so to say, if you can use the terminology, in which all the impressions are stored, filed away systematically. Then there is this another function aspect of it called the manas. When we say, and this is not the mind, it's called manas. This is a state of indecision in respect to a perception. And then the third state is called buddhi, where the actual discrimination of the perception takes place. I'll explain that a little later. And the fourth state is the ahankara, where the I sense comes and say, I understand, I know. So let us look at the bird that we were seeing there. Right? So the signal came through the eyes, it went to the back of the mind, image is created, and it scans the hard disk and the images that are there, and it is maybe not able to make a full differentiation because the light signal is not very clear. It's not a very clear disk. In the evening, some bird is sitting there. Okay, so that stage of that indecision, sankalpa vikalpatmika. Okay, I am not able to make a full decision about what it is. I can see something is there. That is called the manas. Okay. suppose there's an animal far away. I see a four-legged animal, and I'm trying to look at it with great concentration, trying to discern the various features. I can see it's four-legged, but I can't make a decision whether it's a horse or a cow. Okay, so when that type of indecision is there, that is called the manas. When you can zoom into the definite discerning features and I can see there's a pair of horns, then immediately I eliminate the horse out of it and say, I have identified that correctly. Nishchayatmika. The buddhi function is the decision making thing. Okay, correctly. And then the eye sense jumps. I have seen a horse. That all happens so fast, constantly. And not only through the eyes, through all the senses. So you can understand the power of this supercomputer that we have within us, that even when we are not paying attention to this and constantly we are bombarded with sounds that are coming, these visual signals are coming through all the five sense organs, and in a very relaxed way we are constantly processing, and then we are also eliminating all the things that we don't want to pay attention to, and we focus and pay attention to the ones that we want to. That faculty of the mind is also there. Otherwise you'll be overwhelmed by that amount of information that's being constantly coming to us. So these four functions, okay, manas, chitta, man, buddhi, ahankara. These are the functions or the processes that happen in the process of perception. And again, depending on the person, what type of information has been stored. Okay, when new signal comes, new ideas come, new thoughts come, then how can we immediately understand something? So when we say, I know something, I understand something, a teacher is trying to make somebody understand or transfer knowledge into something. If we understand the psychology of what is happening in there, then our approach of teaching and learning and interacting and all that will be totally different than thinking that the mind of a child is really, an empty vessel in which we are pouring information, and we'll retrieve and check that out in an examination. And through our education process, we have put so much information and knowledge there. Maybe we've not taught them how to process it also. Those are important things also. And that person has become so knowledgeable. And if he knows various types of streams or disciplines of knowledge, then you can have this is MD, PhD, this, showing that we know so many things. But as we understand, right in the beginning we said, we don't know anything. We know the content of our mind with respect to all those things, not the things in themselves, so to say, in their essence. The qualities we know, not the thing in themselves. So this chitta, mana, buddhi, ahankara, this instrument that we have is the tool that we use. And like I said right in the beginning, we are not the mind. We as conscious beings are something different from the mind. The mind is an instrument and a tool with which we use to interact with the outside world. How we understand this mind, how it functions, how we can train it to be healthy and strong in all its respects, we'll talk about that a little later. If we paid a little bit more attention to those things, then we empower ourselves with a very powerful tool with which we can access information, process the knowledge, make the decision, and then we not only receive things, because we also transmit things out also, how we are affected by it, how we are infected by it, what we transmit out to the world, whether it's positive or negative. It becomes a whole different game. But we are empowered with that knowledge, and we use this tool in a good, positive way for our good and for the good of others. So, this chitta, in which impressions are kept. How does this happen? How does memory get stored somewhere? So let's have a look at that idea. Then we'll explore a few others. Imagine there's a lake. We call it the mind lake, the Chitta lake. Early in the morning, you're in the countryside, okay, and there's no wind, it's all very, very calm and peaceful. You go and sit on the bank of that little pond, and invariably, after seeing it's all nice, what will you do? You'll pick up a pebble and throw in there. You have a tendency to disturb the peace around. So, you'll throw a pebble and see what happens. And you see that when the pebble hits the surface of the water, it sends out concentric circles and it spreads out, and after a few seconds the pebbles, the waves are still there, but they have become so fine that you don't see the shapes anymore. It's not that they're not there, it just becomes so fine. And then more or less eyes are not able to see, everything has just gone back to its normal state. That's what happened on the conscious mind level, so to say. I saw these things happening there. But the impact of that little pebble hitting the surface of that water creates some shock waves, so to say. And that shock waves travel down to the bottom of that little lake or pond and disturbs the very soft clay that is there creates a little disturbance. That disturbance in that solid phase remains there. That is, it left an impression. That's what we say, it left an impression. And that impression has the capacity at some other time to bounce back from the base and come back to the surface and disturb the surface again in the same way it was done when the stone hit it, so to say. And then you say, I had collected those impressions at the bottom of mind, in my subconscious mind, in my chitta, and now I have recollected them. So I say, I remember them. It comes to your memory. I remember, we call it recollection. First you had collected, now you have recollected. That means you have brought it back to your surface of your conscious mind. So what does it mean? You see something, you take those impressions to the back of your mind, they are stored there as samskaras, and long after that person has gone, you close your eyes and an image of that person comes back into your mind and you have recollected. So that happens with respect to all the signals that are coming in. Whether we are aware or not, that is another factor. From the morning to the evening, from birth to death, through all the sense organs, constantly we are being bombarded with all these signals, so to say, and they are leaving the impressions in your mind. Some of it we use it, most of it they lie there stored unknown. Somebody might remind you sometimes because you don't bring it. Other times you see some people are put in this state of hypnosis, and you're taken back to a particular time and event and all that, and you'd be able to dish out in greatest detail what happened there. That if you try to remember consciously, you would not know, but what was happening long time ago, that means whether we remember them or not, they are stored in our mind. Okay, and they can come up at an undesirable time and either have a good impact or bad impact. So the sum total of all the impressions that we have collected through our interaction with the world, knowingly or unknowingly, are stored in our chitta. And if the overall resultant is good and positive, we'll talk about what is good and what is positive in a more ethical sense later. Whatever is the resultant is, if the overall resultant is positive, we say that person is good. That person has a good character. Character is the sum total of all impressions that we have collected into our mind, and it just doesn't sit down there, but it has the power to influence how we look at the world, how we interact with the world. So when we want to say develop our children and people to have good character, if we understand the psychology that we have to be very, very vigilant in what we feed into the mind through whatever sources, whether we know or not. It's all about mind management, because it's not just mind management doesn't mean you sit down and try to get a jump onto it and have a control of it. It means right from the very fundamentals of being very alert on what type of impressions we are trying to expose ourselves to, okay? And we should be very conscious about it. Parents will have to be very conscious about what they are exposing their children into, because during those formative years they're just going to upload all that data, and after some time they will begin to react with the world based on those impressions, the character of what they become. They interpret the world, they react with the world based on that. So if we just give them full access indiscriminately to the whole world of information that now is so much available through internet without any proper control, and you've given this wonderful internet technology, and what the child is doing there, you do not know, you're just keeping them engaged, you might be polluting their mind with all the nonsense in there and doing them more harm than good. So elders, until people have developed their own judgment and things and control about the quality of information and they take in, it's a role of responsibility of parents and elders who are supervising them to guide them and protect them from the negative ones and expose them to the positive ones. So this is called satsanga, company of good, positive, noble ideas, filling them your mind with them. That's what the person will become. So we're talking about the chitta. This is what the chitta is, a whole powerhouse or a warehouse, so to say, of information that we have gathered depending on where we were born, what type of situations we lived in, what type of experiences we had, what type of people we met, what type of... So that will condition our mind in one particular way. And all of us, as you can understand, have been conditioned differently. And through that mind, we see this world. Through that chitta, we interpret the world. That is the glasses we wear, so to say, and through which we see whatever is out there, unknown and unknowable. So if I'm wearing green glasses and I see something out there, by the time that light travels through that glasses, it has been colored by that greenness of the glass. Okay, and if we are very careful and alert, kept our mind clean and transparent, so to say, then the light comes unadulterated, uncontemplated. We see things more as they are. But if our minds are too conditioned with our views and opinions and all the types of things that we have liked to think, then we don't see things as they are, but we see things as they have been affected or conditioned by our own mind. But we don't have that discrimination all the time. So we say, I know it, this is how I understand, and we make our judgment, make our decisions, but the quality of that judgment and decision is not based on accurate, correct information, so to say. So the chitta is the mind stuff. The manas is that stage where we have this indecision that happens inside. We're trying to sort and say whether we know something or not know something. Knowledge, when we say somebody is knowledgeable, is how much of that information or content of the chitta has been put in our hard disk, so to say, how well we have sorted it out and how quickly we can retrieve it. Just like a filing cabinet, you have put different files and they're properly indexed, and somebody says, can you bring out that document? You look at the list of files and know exactly where it has been kept and you pull it out. Compared to another one who didn't do all this filing and indexing, he just kept on pulling something in that cabinet, and you say, can you bring that out? And then he's rummaging all over the place trying to pull this out. So likewise, some people are very structured in their thinking and understanding of things. They are very logical and systematic, and they can very quickly retrieve things. It's not just things are kept alone in their own silo, so to say, but after some time the links are established between one and another. So you file certain things in a certain area, and this network of information, that how everything that's contained inside is linked. For example, you see a particular person and you mention that particular person's name, immediately a whole stream of ideas related to that person will begin to come to your mind, because somehow that connection and network is there, and you'll keep on talking about that person because that connection is there. The mind is a very wonderful thing, how it works in there within. The buddhi, so mana, chitta, mana, buddhi. That buddhi is the very interesting component of our mind, and something that we will look into developing. The power of discrimination, okay, is discernment, is not developed in everyone at all, or developed differently in different degrees, so to say. And of course the ahankara, the I sense, that has nothing really to do with this chitta per se, but it is the reflection of that consciousness, the light of consciousness in the mind, so to say. Sri Ramakrishna gives a beautiful example. I'm just trying to give an overall perspective of how the interrelationship is there. He says, imagine there's a pot of water out in the sun, and you look into the pot and you see a reflection of the sun, a round circle shining. So there are three things are there. There is the sun in the sky, there is this pot, there is this water, and in that water there is a reflection. So the gross body is the pot. The water is the mind and intellect. That reflection that we see is the I sense, aham bhava, I am. It's the junction between the consciousness, which is the light, the sun is the source of that light, and matter, which is insentient, which is not opposite to consciousness. This junction, the granthi, the knot, chit, jada, granthi. Chit means consciousness, jada means matter. The granthi is the junction point, the knot. That is the I sense that we have. And is it real? Well, you might say, is the reflection real? Well, it has a semblance of the sun. It looks secular, it looks shining. You don't feel the heat. A child will point to that reflection and say, that's the sun in there, in the water. You say, yes, also. But the real sun is in the sky, it's so far away, it's so huge, it's so hot. That is the real sun. So the consciousness that we experience as an I sense within us is really that reflection. It is not the real thing. The real thing is the real sun far away with a totally different characteristics. But because of the junction, this identification takes place, and that I sense says, I am this body, I am this mind. It identifies itself with the changes of the body. So it says, I am born, I am growing old, I am elderly, I am becoming old. And when the pot disintegrates, he says, I am dying. Same thing, it identifies with the changes of the mind. The mind has got these thoughts which are like the ripples in the water, and if there might be a happy ripple and there might be a sad ripple, but those are changes happening in the mind. But due to ignorance in that identification, the person says, I am happy. He doesn't say, my mind is happy, my mind is unhappy. That discrimination and detachment is not there, and because of that identification we suffer. We say, I know and I don't know, I am confused, or this clarity. The quality of that reflection in that water will depend on many factors. If the water is very muddy, then you will not see a shining light of the sun there, it will be something brownish. If it is very much agitated, the water is in ripples, then the reflection of the sun that you see there is also seems to be moving and shaking and all those things, while the real sun is not shaking at all. And if it is transparent, so depending on the qualities of the mind, the nature or the state of the mind, the reflection and everything changes. We try to develop that discrimination and that discernment and separate the three, the body and the mind and the consciousness, and know that the ultimate reality is the sun out in the sky. It has nothing to do with this little pot. You can put one pot and have one reflection. You can put 1,000,000 pots and have 1,000,000 reflections. You can braid all the pots. It does not make any difference to the sun in the sky. So from this ultimate point of view, whether there are thousands and millions of beings in this universe or there are no beings, ultimately to the reality, it is just a play. It's not real. That is coming to a spiritual interpretation. This buddhi, this intellect, is something that we want to talk a little bit more about. So maybe we would not be cover that much in today's talk, but we will pursue this. Let us give an introduction to that. The buddhi is the power of discrimination, nischayatmika. It says nischay, definitely. This is what I see. It feels that I know this, but whether you might feel it today it might feel I know this, and tomorrow in the light of more knowledge and information, say, no, I was wrong. Okay, and the decision changes. And so this discrimination, power of discrimination, is has much to do with the quality of decisions that we make. And life is constantly making a decision. It might be a small decision. You get up and say, what do I do? What do I wear? What do I eat? Which route I take to drive to work? At every moment there's a discrimination and decision is there. And it's a powerful tool, If it's alert and wide and make good decisions, you do things in one way, and if it's a little confused and you go round and round in circles, spend so much time and effort and money, and there's not much productivity in the whole day. So this intellect is something to be trained. What can we train in this others? Can we train the manas? Yes, we can organize those thoughts and ideas in a nice way. If the chitta is pure, then you can store information and can retrieve them in a very fast, quick way. Okay, so people have wonderful memories whose minds are pure. The manas is something to be trained. That can be trained where how quickly we can arrive at how clearly it can present the information to the buddhi to make the decision part of it. Okay, that's the inner function. But the most interesting is this buddhi itself, the intellect, what you call, is different from the mind itself. And the difference between people is mostly the difference in their intelligence or the quality of that intellect they have. Okay. We'll find that through systematic training, this intellect can be developed. Just like, systematic exercise, we can develop our physical strength, doing those exercises again and again and again, and you develop all these muscles. Likewise, these capacities of the mind can also be developed through systematic exercises, mental exercises, proper discipline. Systematically you develop those powers of the mind. And of that, this buddhi, the power of discrimination, we find it is not normally very well developed in children. Okay, so they can't decide for themselves, and therefore they require constant supervision of the parents, always being watchful. As they grow into this, from little babies into little children, okay, they go to a kindergarten, always a teacher is there. One teacher is probably looking after 10 children at most, but you're not putting 20 of them. But when they go to primary school, a teacher can supervise, say, 40 or 30 of them. But as they grow through these various stages of life, this buddhi capacity matures and matures The most turbulent times is the teenage period. So, and that's why we have all these problems with teenagers, because they have not developed that maturity or power of discrimination to have that own proper judgment and all those things. Remember, when we die, we only lose the physical body. The mind persists and re-embodies itself, along with all its samskaras and everything from impressions that were acquired in a previous lifetime. We do not come into this world with a blank slate. All those things are there in the subconscious mind. Through hypnosis and regression and all those things, people are able to go back into previous life and tell many things are there. It is all there. We are not aware of what we have brought in this bundle, impressions and experience from previous lifetime. Few things are coming up here and there, but they're in there. So when you see a little baby, a child, she or he has brought so much of these impressions and things from a previous lifetime. Now in this new environment, they're also taking more into it, and the mind is developing, we say. When we come to this age of the teenage, the early teenage, the body has matured. The mind has matured into a good instrument through which the inner impressions that were stored and brought in are now beginning to find expression. It is like your garden, and inside that there are various types of seeds are there. But when the winter comes, then certain different types of flowers sprout out of there. And when summer comes, another type of variety of summer flowers come in there. But all the seeds are there. They find expression depending on the climate. Likewise, the seeds of actions and reactions and decisions and all those things are in that subconscious mind that we have brought from our previous lifetime. But we give expression to those that are conducive in this age and situation. So during this teenage period, when the body and everything has matured, but the power of discrimination, the buddhi has not matured as yet, then these teenagers are doing so many things. It's not that they intentionally do. If you understand the psychology as parents and teachers and elders, then you'll understand that here the instrument is ready and the seeds are coming out, and there are some beautiful flowers and some thorny things also. It's not that the child is intentionally doing these things, and they do these things and some of them are not nice, and when the parents or elders or teachers ask the child, the teenager, why did you do this? Then you see that they look back and say, in an innocent way, it just happened. I didn't do it. You'll see that the reaction is, I intentionally didn't, ho gaya. So if you understand the psychology of it, then the parents don't react by punishing in this and that, but they try to say, okay, this child that is there, whom I call my son or daughter right now, is a being that has been born many, many times in previous lifetime. In this lifetime, he or she has come in my family. He has brought his whole bundle of experiences and samskaras there, and now some of them are beginning to come up, and that person needs more help and support and understanding, rather than me getting angry and punishing them and all those type of things. The whole approach of dealing with people will suddenly change. And what we will do is then you'll try to provide them the right environment so that the positive good samskaras will come and the undesirable ones will remain there. You can't eliminate them, you can't wipe them out, but they will not get an opportunity to rise until they develop their own capacity, where the buddhi awakens, the power of discrimination awakens, and you say, now they are grown up, they are matured, they can make the right decisions for themselves, we can step back. In this period, the teenage period, which is the turbulent time, so to say. So this insight into understanding the mind, what it contains, how it has been gathered, how they are influencing our thought process, how much control we have, and how we can develop greater control by systematic training. These are some interesting topics to discuss. So we have come to the 1 hour talk today. It's midday here, And we will leave the discussion in this series of talks about exploring the inner space, the mind space, so to say, and empowered with some greater insight and knowledge, we reflect and we're more alert to the inner workings of the mind. So we close our eyes, the senses to the outside world, learn how to perceive what is inside, be watchful, don't be judgmental, but empower ourselves with some tools so that we understand things and we have control over that. And be masters of the mind so that we can ride the horse and not be taken for a ride. That would be the idea. And what are those disciplines? Meditation, spiritual disciplines, power of discrimination, vivek, power of dispassion, vairagya, non-attachment. Those would be the tools that we will try to slowly develop. And empowered with those tools, we then can deal not only with the outside world, that is easier. The more difficult one is to deal with the inner world, and we need to be empowered with those tools. Unfortunately, our education system doesn't do that. It just gives us so much information, teaches a little bit about how to process that into knowledge, and then we are left to our own devices. True education is about self-empowerment, and it starts with some good understanding of the mind. We all have a mind. I will try to guide you with some knowledge and tools. We can use them and start understanding and observing those inner movements and processes that are there. So we'll end there today, and we hope to see you next Sunday at the same time. Om asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.